Baptist Church. Pastor, if you'd like to come forward, please, and everyone, if you so choose, please stand with me and remain standing for the pledge to our nation's flag.
Let us pray, please. Our Father and our God, we want to tell you thank you for this new day, for the privileges, the responsibilities, the grace and mercies and the blessings that come along with it. I want to tell you thank you, Father, for this government body that assembled here together today for this meeting. Father, we've almost gotten used to seeing government at every level not work together. On the world stage, the national level, even our state level. I'm asking you, Lord, to help the local government, to be able to work together in the days and weeks to come. And I thank you, Father, for even the mayor that's coming to be as they dovetail with the other council people. Father, these blessings and others that you see we stand in need of, we ask to the highest government that there ever has been and will be. It is in the precious, powerful name of Jesus that we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge to our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor Petty. May we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Ames.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Philshaw.
Present.
Councilmember Durio.
Here.
Councilmember Getz.
Present.
Councilmember Turner.
Here.
Councilmember Samuel.
Present.
And Councilmember Neal.
Present.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am pleased to present the proclamation. We have one today, and it's on behalf of Dr. Kenneth Evans, and I see Dr. Evans in the back there. And I just want to say how pleased I am to present this proclamation as Dr. Evans is retiring about the same time as me. So I'm so happy to do this. Got to know Dr. Evans very, very well during many natural disasters, but especially during Hurricane Harvey. And we got to work together very closely, and I thank you for that. And I thank you for all that Lamar has contributed to our economy, to our citizens, and to your students. Thank you so much. Whereas Lamar University and the City of Beaumont have a long, productive, and mutually beneficial relationship spanning more than 90 years, and whereas Dr. Kenneth R. Evans has faithfully served as president of Lamar University for the past 8 years, and whereas during this time, the number of students who study abroad each year has quadrupled. The Office of Study Abroad for the university was also created during Dr. Evans' tenure. And whereas Dr. Evans saw a need in the community and formed the Greater South Park Neighborhood Coalition, which received the Bill Leger Family Services Family Advocate of the Year Award in 2018. Dr. Evans also ushered the establishment of the Women in Philanthropy Program and the LU Public Art Committee with his late wife, Nancy Evans. And whereas Dr. Evans brought the university through a strategic plan from 2015 to 2020, established the President's Task Force on Diversity, Inclusion, Access, and Equity, and finalized the strategic plan for 2020 through 2025. And now, therefore, I, Becky Ames, Mayor of the City of Beaumont, say farewell and extend our appreciation to Dr. Kenneth R. Evans for his leadership and collaboration within our community. I consider it an honor to proclaim Saturday, June 5th, 2021 as Kenneth R. Evans Day in Beaumont in honor of Dr. Evans' accomplishments, as well as highlighting the new Ken Evans cycling route of Southeast Texas, A Bridge Too Far. Accordingly, I have set my hand and I've caused the seal of the City of Beaumont to be affixed, signed today, June 1st, 2021. And again, so much has happened under your tenure, President Evans, Dr. Evans, and we appreciate you, and I would really love it if you would come up and accept this proclamation. Feel free to shake everyone's hands and say a few words. podium, you're still taller.
I had no idea that that route was going to be named the Bridge Too Far. That's awesome. The route that we actually ride on takes us from Spindletop, Gladys City, and we put our foot down in Louisiana and come back. So it's called the Louisiana Ride, at least until it's been renamed. So thank you for that. Thank you for all you've done on behalf of Lamar University. We are indeed a partnership between the university and the city. I know the city's better because of us, and we're better because of the city. So thank you for all you have done on behalf of Lamar, South Park, and our students. And I wish you all the very best as the city goes forward under your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Evans. We appreciate you, and enjoy the rest of your time here. And thank you, Dean, my former cohort. So glad you're here too. Thank you. Now would be the time for any citizen who wishes to speak. If you would like to make public comment today on scheduled agenda items 1 through 3, which is the consent agenda, and 5 and 6, which were discussion items. Item number 4 has already been heard in a joint public hearing between the Planning Commission and the City Council, so it's not open for comment. However, you may speak on 1 through 3, 5, 6. If you would like to, and you haven't already done so, please fill out the green slip at the rear of the room and hand it to the city clerk at the front of the room. She will call out your name. We would appreciate if you keep your comments to 3 minutes. The green light will come on when you approach the podium, and the red light will come on when your time is up. If you're here to speak on any other item today, I will open up the microphone at the end of our general business for that purpose. But right now, it's for 1, 2, 3, 5, 6.
I don't have any, Mayor.
Is there no one that wishes to speak? There appearing to be no one. Council, may I have a motion, please, on the consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
There's a motion for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the floor for approval. Is there any discussion, questions, comments? Councilmember Neal.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Attorney, on item number 2, which is on the Tricon contract, one of the delivery costs for the diesel, I'm assuming the gasoline too, is 5 cents per gallon. Is that that's not listed in the resolution? Just looking through here and saw that. And I don't think that's part of the 11-cent purchase price.
I'm not sure of that. With the chart, if you wanna, make the motion that includes that, we can certainly fix that.
Would you like to include that in your motion, Councilmember Getz?
Yes, I will accept an amendment to that effect.
Thank you. And you as well?
Second.
Okay. It's been added. Is there any questions or discussions?
I had one other question, Mayor.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor. On item number 3, which is for the mosquito control, looks like this original agreement goes back to 2018, but this amendment that we're doing today only goes through June 30th. Is this just a one-time purchase that they have funds and, but then a new contract will be coming here soon?
Won't be a new contract, it's just an amendment. My understanding, Kenneth Coleman's here, our public health director, so we received these funds and they were planning a summit, which they were not able to hold because of COVID-19, and then they reduced the amount, and this is approval for the mosquito control. So we can use those funds actually just to pass through to Jefferson County.
All right, thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, there's a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Next item, please, number 4.
Mayor and Council, item number 4 is to consider a request for the conveyance and dedication of private streets and infrastructure located in Wood Hollow Townhomes, sections 1 and 2, to the city of Beaumont. Alan Kramer, who's the president of the Homeowners Association, has requested that the city accept maintenance again of the private street known as Wood Hollow Townhomes Private Drive and its infrastructure. The Public Works Department, Water Utilities Department, Fire Department, and Solid Waste Division All recommend denial. At a joint public hearing held on May the 17th, the Planning Commission recommended 5-0 to deny the request. The administration recommends denial as well.
Thank you, council. You have heard the reading of item number 4. I believe we discussed this in detail at the joint public hearing. Is there a motion, please?
So moved.
There's a motion for denial, or as read?
Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
As read, okay. There's a motion on the floor for as read, so denial. Is there a second for that?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay, go ahead,
Thank you, Mayor.
please.
For the city manager, it is true that this street, the 16th Street, is a dead-end street. It dead ends into the townhomes. It's not a pass-through. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, there's a motion and a second on the floor for denial. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries unanimously. We've got a couple of discussion items. If you'd like to take us into the first one, please.
Okay. Mayor and council, the first discussion item is to review and discuss a plan to spend approximately $16.5 million in funding from the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. So the city of Beaumont has earmarked almost $33.1 million, and we received the $16.54 million approximately 2 weeks ago, and we'll receive the remainder in fiscal year 2022. So Todd Semino, our Chief Financial Officer, is going to walk through a plan that we're proposing on how to use, again, the $16.54 million.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So as you can see on this slide here, for the coronavirus state and local fiscal refunds use, there's 4 broad categories of use. The first one is support public health, emergency expenditures, and to address negative economic impacts caused to the public by the health emergency. The second one is replace lost public sector revenue. The third broad category is provide premium pay for essential workers. And then finally, we can invest in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. So we'd like to walk you through our recommendations that would focus on the water and sewer infrastructure and also to recover partial public sector lost revenue. So what you're looking at here is a slide, it's a page directly out of the proposed 2022 capital program that we gave to council last month. You will see here the items in red, the projects in red, are the projects that we're suggesting for use of what's also called the American Rescue Plan funds. If we don't use the American Rescue Plan funds for the projects in red, then we would not have funds to fund those projects. So we would either need to go out for water and sewer revenue bonds, go into fund balance, and maybe possibly reassess our priorities or a combination of all 3. This page right here basically gives a summary of those projects in red, and then also we're going to look at a recovery of lost revenue that would go to the general fund in the amount of $3 million. So you can see the total of the proposed uses is just a little under the $16.5 million that we received. These are estimated numbers. And we would probably go through the same process next year about this time when we receive the other half, the other $16.5 million.
Just let that sit up there. This is a lot for you to absorb at one time. Molly Villarreal, John Pippins, who's an engineer, he's our main engineer at the water department here in the front row, sitting next to Molly. They can speak to some of these projects or all of them, or Todd and I can, but it's important, number one, you're not gonna come back and vote on these until we would go out for bid, but we would like the direction. We have to spend these funds or be well on our way within, for sure, a year. So we need your buy-in, we need the green light so we can at least move forward with these various projects. Don't necessarily have to do it today, but if you're not comfortable today, very soon, because then we're gonna start working with engineering firms, start moving these projects forward. wherever they are, and they're at different stages, but I would just look at each one of these right now and then ask any questions you may have today. These are all, again, in our opinion, really good projects, projects that y'all have talked about, some of them for years, especially as it relates to additional sewer rehab.
Okay, questions, council member?
In just a few weeks, we're going to have an election for a new mayor. Are we going to have another workshop when we have a new mayor on board to include that person as part of this direction giving? Or are you looking for direction from the council that is seated now?
The next discussion item that I'm gonna walk you through, I think it's important that the new mayor is seated, in my opinion. This, maybe not so much, because these are projects that, I mean, we have 2 new council members sitting up here now, but the council, the mayor and other council members, we've been talking about some of these projects for years. So we just finally have the money to move forward.
Another question. Okay, so looking at these projects, it looks like a lot of this is sewer rehab. Some of it's also water, and I very much agree with the purpose of us using these funds for infrastructure. Can you kind of break down in a little bit more detail what we actually hope to see from each one of these delineated items? There's like 7 down here, 3, 6, 7. And for the public's benefit, how will it help with issues that we have all heard the public most concerned about in the last couple of years, such as brown water and sewage backing up and flooding issues?
Yeah, there's not much brown water. I get a report every day, Monday through Friday, how many calls we have for brown water. Some days close to 0. On a high day, you might see around 10. So, you know, when you have 42,000 customers, I wouldn't say that's a lot of people. But let's talk about these. Pine Street Water Production Plant. Those improvements, and again, Molly and John can speak more to it than I can in greater detail. However, those are priorities that Bart Barkowiak and Mike Harris, Molly and John Pippins and key staff have identified. That's more related to Hurricane Harvey, meaning what we've discovered as top priorities that we need to move forward with. Those first 2 projects are at the water production plant located on Pine Street. Water production system repairs, that's a small relative number. It's in the capital program, proposed program, but there's always improvements identified within the system. We operate a $53 million water department for water and sewer and infrastructure. So it's by far the largest department we have on an expenditure basis is the water department, paid for by our customers. So 1.4 million, that's again going to be priorities that Bart, Molly, and Mike have within the system. Could be related to water lines, could be, it's more just probably some of our main lines and repairs. The Harriet list.
Wait, before you go, let's go back to the first 2 for just a
Okay.
second. I understand that you said they've been identified as priorities.
Yes.
What are they? What are they doing?
Let's do this. How about this? Let me give you again the proposed capital program. Let me pass it around, and then I can tell you what page it's on, and you go to that page and you can read the description, because the description, as you know, the public doesn't get this, they can, but the who, what, when, where, why is in here. So let me pass that around, and then we'll start with number 1. You can read the description. Again, it's a lot to absorb. This is the capital program for the benefit of the public. I have to turn that into y'all by May the 15th of each year, according to the city charter. So we do that, and then you, the council, adopt the capital program, usually during the budget process in September. And so it's a separate vote, but you approve the capital program on an annual basis. So let's go, Pine Street Water Production Plant, chemical improvements. If you'll look under the project descriptions, and I've numbered these pages, so let's go to
I believe it's page 6.
if you go to page,
But that's not the
that's not the description. Go to page
15.
Go to page 15, read that, and then Molly or John would probably be in a better position to answer any detailed questions.
I guess my detailed question is, we're including additional caustic storage capacity to meet TCEQ requirements and replacing the polymer dosage system. Can you explain what that is to me?
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. The Pine Street Chemical Improvements Project, after Hurricane Harvey, as you're aware, during Hurricane Harvey, Beaumont was an island. And so there were some supply chain issues with getting chemicals to Beaumont. We had enough chemicals on site to work through Hurricane Harvey before chemicals started coming back to us. But this, Friesen Nichols was hired to evaluate the water treatment plant on Pine Street and identify any areas where we can become more resilient. And so one of their recommendations as a result, and in review with the TCEQ requirements for having adequate volume of chemicals available on your site at all time, they did recommend that we increase our chemical storage capacity for such things as alum and caustic, which are the chemicals that are used to treat the water. We're also going to include, we plan to include additional areas for future tanks in case we need to expand further in the future. Remove and dispose of the older caustic tanks, the ones that we're replacing with the new ones. And then improve our chemical pumps and level measurement equipment so that we're better able to dose, mix, and keep track of our inventory. And so, and also to the polymer dosage system, which is part of the chemical improvements. So those are the items that were recommended by Friesen Nichols.
So the main thing that I got from that is that we are expanding our capacity to store chemicals there.
Correct.
Okay.
To store and to dose chemicals.
To store and
Dose.
dose chemicals. Okay, thank you for that one. What about the second one?
So the Basin Sludge, excuse me.
If you don't mind, I think Councilmember Durio had a question
sure.
on that one before we move any further. Go ahead, okay. Go ahead, please.
Thank The Basin Sludge Drain Rehabilitation, there are 6 sludge drain valves and the piping at our 3 older clarifier basins at the Pine Street plant that are scheduled to be replaced. And with the improvements that we will plan to move the valves to a location where it is easier and safer to dig if we have to access those valves for any reason. Secure them with a manhole so that it is easier to access, so you don't have to excavate it. And also, too, will improve our ability to flush the lines for any future blockages. Currently, the setup is not very user-friendly, and so we want to be able to improve our ability to respond to any stoppages on these sludge lines. Yes, sir.
When you say flushing the lines, for the citizens watching who may not understand what flushing the lines mean, can you kind of enlighten everybody?
So this is the sludge that is generated through the treatment of the surface water. The water has sediments in it, makes it cloudy, muddy looking. So it's essentially that mud that we're extracting from the water as we treat it. that falls down, and it can plug a line just like you would clog a drain in your home in the sink. And so just like at your home, you have access points, you have clean outs, or you're able to go through a drain to unstop that line. That's what we're trying to do as well, is just to be able to go in and unstop the lines on this system.
Is that all you have? Okay. What else, please? Go ahead, please.
I guess this might be for Kyle. These amounts, are these the totals for this project?
Yes, they're estimated amounts because we haven't gone out for bid, so we're trying to, I mean, these are, again, estimates that'll be close, we hope, to 16 million.
And if it comes in over that, we have to cover that, or we get more
Yes,
from this? Okay.
we'll adjust, and the good news is that you authorized us to issue, the council did water revenue bonds
Okay.
back, like 6 months ago? So, if we had to come up with additional monies, we have it, or we could use cash from our fund balance. And I say fund balance, it's the fund balance in the water fund.
Yep. Councilmember Neal?
Thank you. When is the last time, or maybe never, but when is the last time you've seen $30 million spent on water and sewer at one time like this?
30 million?
Well, between this year and next year. Saying it's all spent on these two type projects.
Well, exception of the lost revenue that's on
I-
the water.
Not in 30 years plus.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. I understand that some of these projects have been on here on the list for some time, but what can we, speak to the ones that you feel like are critical, that
Well,
this
the-
is not just a wish list, or is this
No.
all the critical ones?
We've
that
talked about some of these for a couple of years. You know, Harvey was in 2018, I believe 2018.
2017.
Was it 17? No, these are all new since Harvey. Meaning, we do sewer rehab every day and have for years and years and years. But that dollar amount, that's a lot of additional work. But all those other projects you see are new projects, or as a result of the storm, either Imelda or Harvey. So those are all new.
And I
Right.
think it would be
I think they're all new.
safe to say that had Harvey not happened, unfortunately it did, but we would not be able to spend this much money all at one time, due to the fact that we wouldn't have it.
Yeah, when I say we've been talking about these for years, we've been talking about them since Hurricane Harvey.
Okay,
So I need to clarify that.
okay.
Because it all happened, I mean, a
Yeah,
lot
we've
of things
been-
happened
we've
that we
been
didn't expect.
Assessing what are the priorities, which projects are we gonna move forward? Which projects did we make application to the state, federal funds flowing through the state? Which projects did we make application for that federal funding for, which some of them you could not engineer or start engineering, or you lose the money? Some projects you could engineer, depends on which agency you were making application for. So, but these are priorities from our staff who works in these facilities and works out there in the field every day. So when we sat down with them a number of times, and we have for the last 3 years, just what we do, what are the priorities and which projects are we working on? But these are the ones that we felt like with the best use of this federal money at this time.
Okay, yes.
Moving on to the water production system repairs, the third item down there. Of course, we repair things that break in our water production system every day, every week, every month, every year. If we were not the recipient of these funds, we would be doing that anyway. Is there any difference between what these repairs are? Is there something specific in mind here? Or is that just the general type of repairs that we are going to be looking at doing routinely?
Most of these are all necessary repairs. These are larger items. They're not large enough to warrant maybe a separate CIP project, but they are of a dollar value that are larger than what we would cover in our normal operating budget. Some examples that we've presented to council before are the computer upgrade at the, for the generators at Pine Street. That was brought to you a few months ago. We recently awarded the tank rehabilitation at Loeb. We also have the caustic improvements that we're adding the caustic system to Loeb as directed by the water quality study that Friesen Nichols prepared for us. Also the 72-inch line repair. So those are those are the type of projects that fit into that category. There are new generators at the at Loeb and at the prison site. Also, too, what we're looking at is winterization possibly of the Pine Street plant to help improve the resiliency in the event of another large winter storm. Anticipated other projects are repairs to our elevated tanks where we have valves or underground piping that those repairs are needed. And so this is the opportunity. We've identified these through our inspections. But again, they are larger than they're not large enough for their own dedicated CIP project, but they are outside of the scope of our normal operating budget.
So these projects, which, yes, I remember we talked about a lot of these, Loeb and so forth, rather than use or issue additional water revenue bonds to finance these, we're looking at using this funding source for some of those projects. Is that fair?
That's fair. Anything over 50,000 will come to the city council for approval.
It's not just general maintenance.
No, it's not. And I can understand you're going to want to know, and from a time standpoint, it may be easier to do away with that line item and just go ahead and increase sewer main rehab to 7.4 million. That's plausible, doable, practical, meaning that way you know up front you're going to move forward to try to spend 7.4 million on sewer rehab citywide. And any repairs that come up, again, 50,000 or more, they're going to come to you for a vote. We could just pay for that out of water revenue bonds. Maybe easier, maybe, because then we're not looking to identify and move some of those items as quickly, trying to meet this timeline that the federal government has set. So that's again up to you. This was our best recommendation over the last 2 weeks, you know, and maybe a little further. We knew this money was possibly coming, but so if the council wanted to feel like we know where this money's going, it's easier to explain to the public, increase the sewer main rehab to 7.4 million, and we'll do away with that water production system repairs line
It'll
item.
fall under that.
It'll still be in the capital program. It's in there anyway from the 2021 program.
Just wouldn't be funded.
Yeah, just funded under a different source.
Is any of this different than what we had in the that we received a couple of weeks ago?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
It
And
is
none of the-
different. It's different from the capital program that you approved back in, say, September of 2020.
But we didn't know what we were gonna
Exactly.
get at the time
Right.
from this recovery
Right.
fund. And I do wanna clarify though, that even if we move this, what we were talking about here was not just general repairs, because I don't want that to
No,
be
it's-
misunderstood at
no.
all, because that's not what
We
was
do
being
that every
suggested.
day, every month of every year. That's what we do. This is, these are just priorities again by our staff, knowing that we have the 16.5 million. How can we jump on these projects in a timely manner, which great for the public, and also it's gonna meet those federal mandates of when we have to spend the money.
Councilmember Getz.
Okay, Mayor, I categorize it as general repairs because that seems to be the way it's described in the capital plan. And I understand the difference between the specific projects that Molly just delineated, such as improvements at Loeb versus general repairs. But it talks about repairs, and that's why I was asking those questions. But now we're talking about conflating water production system repairs, which Molly has explained incorporate specific things as part of sewer main rehab. And to my understanding, those are separate things. And the sewer main rehab with the $6 million allocated to that. Could you explain how that works into with our sanitary sewer overflow initiative and whether or not there's any application for that?
The water production system repairs is specifically focused on the Pine Street plant, the Loeb facility, along with the wells in Hardin County, and the elevated storage tanks.
Right.
It's not connected to the sanitary sewer system.
Okay, so when you're talking about sewer main rehab and with a $6 million price tag, what are we talking about there?
Okay. So those involve the pipe bursting contracts that, we recently had 5 large contracts related directly to the sewer rehab, such as the Dallin West pipe bursting, the pipe bursting work order contract phase 3, the sewer evaluation contracts, and so we anticipate continuing forward with the pipe bursting, as well as identifying any critical improvements that may be found as LAN works through the second phase of their sewer model for the system. If they identify anything that's urgent that needs us to respond quickly, we want to make sure that we have the funding to address those issues if they are uncovered. Continuing with the sewer evaluation contracts, which are the cleaning and TVing and smoke testing of the sanitary sewer lines. Like I said, pipe bursting. We also do routine cleaning of the lift stations, the wet wells, and continue the contract and in-house manhole rehabilitation. So these are all items that do tie directly to the SSO program.
Okay, so that's what I was asking about. So with these being different, Mr. Manager, why are you recommending combining these items? One is sewer, one is water production.
That's not what I said.
Well-
What I said was you wouldn't have the 1.4 million up there for water production repairs within the water system. Don't do that at all. We're gonna do it, we could do that out of the capital program with water revenue bonds. What
Okay.
you would do is to increase the sewer work from, instead of spending 6 million, spend 7.4 million.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
But City Manager, I understand you seem to be recommending that to simplify things for us, but do you feel like that's the best solution?
As I sit here today, I think it'd probably be easier to explain to the public. And I know that sewer is very important to the council. Y'all have approved more work in the last 2 years than we've seen in 30 years, and this would just be on top of that. We were planning to do this work anyway, but we could do it now. And again, maybe you want to spend 7.4 million instead of 6 million.
I have a question, Ms. Molly.
Yes,
With
sir.
the pipe bursting, how are we kind of going back and evaluating and measuring the success of the pipe bursting projects that you guys already done?
We are looking at, with LAN, they're starting the flow monitoring portion of the study. And we are also looking at doing additional flow monitoring for the main trunk lines that come to the sewer plant. And so we're looking to find the best way to monitor and see if we're seeing a reduction in the impact to the system. And LAN's also working with us on better evaluating the data that we do collect from our lift stations so that we can make better decisions in the future if the
They
data's there.
They don't know who LAN is. Tell them.
I'm sorry. LAN, Lockwood, Andrews, and Noonan is the consultant engineer who was hired to perform the sanitary sewer master plan for the city. So they are evaluating holistically the entire system and making recommendations. We completed phase 1 last year, and they have started on the second phase here recently. We're just getting started, and they plan to start the flow monitoring process, which is where they actually put monitors inside selected manholes to measure the flow, to see how the system responds to rain events, to measure the inflow and infiltration in the system, as opposed to during dry weather.
Okay, this is not a Molly question. This is going in a completely different direction. and might tie into some of the $3 million that is being proposed for recovery of lost revenue to the general fund. We are all probably aware that the Texas legislature passed House Bill, I think it was 1925, and it has been sent to the governor for his signature, and he has said that he's going to sign it. And if you don't know what that is legislation which is saying that it is going to become the responsibility of the cities in Texas, as well as other local governments, to make sure that homeless people are not camping out on public places. And further, it says that if the cities don't enforce it, they will risk losing their state funding. So I looked at some of the possible uses of this $16.3 million that we're going to receive. And yes, addressing the needs of the homeless is a viable use of these funds. So as chair of the Mayor's Homeless Coalition, I have met for many months now and have become very aware of some of the situations and how acute it is in our homeless community. It's going to be impossible for us and for law enforcement to enforce this mandate. And we've all taken an oath to uphold the laws of the state of Texas. It's going to be impossible if we don't start thinking ahead of where will the homeless be put. Other cities are looking at this as well, but we really are missing an opportunity which will become a necessity as we move forward to identify a way of housing our homeless and providing them with some of the basic hygiene services that they need. So I would encourage staff to think about that. I know Chris has attended every one of our Homeless Coalition meetings, and he's very, very much in tune with some of these programs and initiatives. But I would encourage staff to spend some time thinking about how we're going to address that and whether or not we want to pull some section of that funding to provide that opportunity.
Does anybody want to speak to that? We have discussed it quite a bit, but it's going to conflict, as I understand it, with, we're kind of in a catch-22
Yeah, we're,
on that bill.
staff's fully aware of the legislation. We've been following it. We talked about it today, actually. So I think Councilmember Getz should, my recommendation, make a report to the full council, maybe when the new mayor's sworn in, and make a report. Where is your committee? What are your recommendations? What's the committee's recommendations? I don't recommend spending any of the $16.3 million on this because, number one, there's timelines, again, that we have to meet. It would take too long to put that program together. By the way, you have to fund it every year if you start a program. So there's a lot to it. You're going to, once you come back and make a report to the full council, and let's say the council adopts or implements some new policy or program, let's just say a program, again, you have to fund it every year. So that's going to take months and months of the council's time, staff's time to put all that together, whatever may be implemented. So I wouldn't recommend using the $16.3 million. You don't have enough time.
I'm not making that recommendation at all. not even close to that. That's not what I said.
That's what I gathered. But
No, not at all. Not close at all. I said that $3 million, and I'm not suggesting that we use $3 million. I'm suggesting that we try to identify some property, some land that we can use to house the homeless and provide them with basic services, whether that be with a structure or allowing tent camping like they're doing in Austin.
Councilmember, if you're not suggesting the $3 million, then we don't have a.
No, I'm suggesting a portion. I'm
today.
suggesting that we consider that staff consider using a portion of that 3 million, because
Well,
I,
it's not up to staff, it's up to the council. The
Well,
council decides how to spend this 16.3 million. And I think you ought to have another work session
On
on this
homeless.
subject.
I do too.
That's an extremely important subject that's gonna take hours and hours to talk and walk through. But I think first, you've gotta come back and tell the council where you are with the committee. That hadn't been done at all. So
I
we don't,
did ask
I don't
for
think
a-
any council members know what the findings are thus far, what recommendations are y'all making? So that hasn't even been done yet, so I think it's not timely.
Well, plus if you make a commitment now, certain things, you have to continue them. So we have to really be careful in the decisions that we make. And I'm speaking because I am still the mayor for another month. And I'm hoping that no one's suggesting that we shouldn't move forward with anything until the new mayor's seated, because that's been said several times on different items by you, council member. With all due respect, I am still here, standing right here, and I've got a lot of experience. Hurricane season started today. I don't think we should sit on anything that has to do with our drainage, our sewer, or anything like that. The whole reason why this is before us is because of what we went through with Hurricane Harvey. And, you know, I sat on council with 3 new mayors, and I never heard that come up continuously like it has this time. But I'm treating with you with the same respect that I hope that you'll continue to treat me over this next month. So with that said, I think we need to give staff some direction so we can move forward. Hurricane season started today. Had a meeting with Tim Otnichek today. We have to move forward. We can't just put everything on hold until June 29th.
Mayor, I need to clarify what I said because there appears to be some confusion about it. I did not suggest that we put any of these water or sewer infrastructure items to the wayside or on hold. I did say that this $3 million that is allocated for recovery of lost revenue to the general fund, that some portion of that should be considered by staff and brought to council to consider ways to deal with the effects that we're going to have with implementing the new legislation coming forth out of Austin. And if you want to wait for the Homeless Coalition Committee to give recommendations, it's on the agenda for the meeting this Thursday to talk about that, and we will talk about that, and I'll be prepared shortly thereafter to make a report to the council as to the results of that discussion. But we are going to have to deal with it. We can't kick that can down the road because the governor and the legislature's not going to let us do that anymore. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, well, I thought that, excuse me if I misunderstood, I thought at the beginning of this summary of proposed uses for the 16.3, you asked if that should happen as far as waiting. My opinion is this is really important. We have to give staff some direction. It's important because we're in hurricane season, and I'm experienced enough to know what we need to do. I went through Hurricane Harvey. And so, with all due respect, I just really think as long as I'm sitting here, I'm still the mayor, and I don't think there's anyone up here that wants to put anything off. As far as giving staff a recommendation on this $3 million, if we want to take some of it out for the homeless, then I think that the entire council that would be giving that direction needs to have we need to have a work session, certainly with the city attorney, because I have heard everything that you talked about, and the implications that it could suggest if we are to go ahead and go into something without making a good plan. Because there are some things that are going to be very, very difficult in the next few years for all cities. And I think it's going to be tied up in the courts for a few years too. That's just my opinion, but I just think the rest of the council, especially the new members, need to understand what this House bill says and how it can affect us and how it can affect us from the national level as well, not just state. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we need to clarify this $3 million per this American Rescue Plan Act. allows us to pay ourselves back for money that was previously already spent.
That's right.
So all we're doing is just paying back the savings account for money that was previously spent.
That's exactly right.
Per the Rescue Plan Act.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
And one last question, Mayor, which I noticed you said hurricane season, and that's why I was interested in some of these projects on the items. Is it a particular timeline normally when we approve projects like this to this magnitude?
You just
Would
giving
it be in
us the
hurricane
green light.
season?
Every project's different, so there's five, take the water production system repairs off. So there's 5 projects up there. So staff, if you give us the green light today, we'll move forward with those 5 projects. If we have the engineering and are ready to go out for bids, we'll do that. In most cases, we have to engineer these projects. It takes a little time, but we would move forward with those 5 immediately.
And it would come back.
But it comes back to you again.
Once
Once we go out for bids,
it'll
anything
come
over
back to the entire
50,000,
council.
you approve the contract.
They're just trying to get some direction now if they can move forward, but they will all come back to the council. You're welcome. Anything else on this item?
One question.
Yes, go ahead, please.
The
Councilman Currier.
recovery, the 3 million recovery, once that in general fund,
Mhm.
you can use that for, what can you use that for once it's in general fund?
It
Whatever
just,
comes
it
up?
just goes in our fund balance.
We've
and
spent
then-
it, basically.
Yeah, we've already spent that
We've
money. We're
spent it.
reimbursing ourselves,
Okay.
but it'll go into our fund balance because we weren't anticipating this revenue. So your fund balance, again, is extremely healthy right now. And it allows you some flexibility as you go into future years as to what you may want to do with those funds.
Okay. Is there anything else on, were y'all finished on this item?
We were.
Okay. Is
We'd
there,
like some direction. We could leave it like it is up there. You could do away with, again, that one line item, water production system repairs, if you wanted to, and spend additional money on sewer. It's up to you.
I would support moving the money into the sewer main rehab, changing that to 7.4.
let me ask Molly a question first, if you don't mind, before I comment on that. So, obviously, this is what you've recommended, but with some of the issues we've had with our water system, is it which would make the bigger bang for our buck, more or less? Because the water production system repairs are important too. There's some things that you mentioned, unless we're gonna do it anyway.
You're gonna do it anyway, but you don't know specifically how much, because it allows you that 1.4, it's just a projected number
Yeah.
of what may pop up, right? So, and we have water revenue bonds already. We have that money in our accounts.
Because I wouldn't want to not do that.
So it's not gonna short us anything. We'll be
Okay.
fine.
And then I'd be all right
It
with
just
that.
specifically says you're gonna go spend 7.4 million on sewer rehab citywide.
Okay. All right?
Last question on this, sewer main rehab. By adding another $1.4 million into it, can you tell the public by rehabilitating our sewer mains, will that help enhance the ability of citizens to flush their toilets when it is raining?
That is our goal.
The answer is yes. At the same time, it creates additional problems out there, right? Not related to sewer. What happens is, and you've been on a number of these emails, Councilman specifically, what happens is, let's say you have holes and problems in a sewer line, right? So when it rains, all that rainwater goes into the sewer system and backs up the system. So now you put in new pipe, close off all those, you had all these infiltration issues, right? So now that water that may have drained into our system caused problems over here. Now they have flooding or drainage issues on their residential property or on their commercial property, which is their responsibility. I'm just saying it creates drainage issues in a lot of cases. You've called us out there, probably to 5 different homeowners in the last couple months. So we go out there and say, yeah, that's on you. It's on your property. Yeah, your property doesn't drain anymore because it used to go in our sewer system.
And it
So
won't.
you try to solve the bigger problem, which is sewer problems and people flushing their toilets. And when you do that, it creates drainage issues in a lot of cases.
And I bring that up for that specific point, Mr. Manager, because people need to understand what we're doing here. We're we don't want rainwater infiltrating into our sewer lines, okay? And that is not the way to drain your yard. That's not the purpose here. But by making the improvements that we're recommending here, yes, it is causing another type of problem. It is causing some flooding issues, which is incumbent upon the homeowners to deal with, because that will be the next thing. You know, when I first got here on council, the roads were the things that were really the hot button item at that time. We did a lot of improvements to the roads. We went out and measured the condition of the roads, and we made tremendous improvements there. And then it started becoming other items such as sewer and, you know, backing up into your home during rainwater events. So we're trying to get a handle on that, and I'm glad to see that we're doing that. It's going to cause still another problem, though. It's going to cause some flooding issues in some homes. So it's going to be incumbent upon the homeowners to figure out a way to move that water, and a lot of times this is in their backyard, out to the front yard where it can go into the streets. Am I saying that correctly? All right.
Okay, any other questions, council? Councilmember Samuel.
I just have a comment.
Okay.
I want to thank staff for the attention that's been given to rectifying the problems, whether it be in street and drainage, water and sewer. We've made a tremendous advancements in recent years in getting things done. So we are moving in the right direction. And I just want to say I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilman. And to answer, one of you alluded to, go back to this, now it's going to say 7.4 million sewer main rehab. What staff does, so the public knows, is they track through 311 calls directly to the water department, sewer department. So they track where are we having the biggest problems in the city of Beaumont. And, you know, they've done smoke testing, which you've heard about. And so they analyze these areas. So they're going to come back and make a recommendation on specific targeted areas for sewer rehab in the city based on where we're having the greatest number of issues. How many times we've been out there to repair, you know, a certain line, calls within a certain area. So they have all that data. That's what drives when they come back and make a recommendation for a pipe bursting project within a specific neighborhood or area. It's based on data. It's, maybe we don't talk about that enough, but it's definitely what we do. So, thank you.
One more question, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you,
So it
Molly.
is,
Thank
thank you, Ms. Molly. So it is safe to say that we do need citizens to do a better job actually reporting things to 311 versus getting on social media and posting a picture. The only way we can document it and trace it is they actually call in and physically report it, correct?
Exactly.
And
All
we
right.
do document it.
Yes, sir.
And
Yes,
we
ma'am.
have statistics on all of it. Yeah. Okay. All right. We do have another work session or discussion item.
Yes, ma'am. I think Mr. Durio has a
We
question.
decide what we're gonna do on this?
Oh, were y'all, was the council, was there agreement with the 7.4 instead of the 6 million?
As long as we get it all done. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. So the next discussion item says review and discuss the capital program and the potential borrowing for street drainage and general improvement projects. So if you'll look at this with me, so the tax rate in Beaumont is 71 cents per $100 valuation. The city council sets that tax rate on an annual basis during the budget process. And every year, that tax rate is apportioned to the general fund and to the debt service fund. And so you can see the 0.506, that's the apportionment this year to the general fund. The general fund, as you know, pays for police and fire, EMS, parks, libraries, go on down the list. And then that portion to debt service is repaying the debt that the city council borrows from time to time, not for water and sewer projects. That is for street projects, drainage projects, and general improvement projects, okay? So, go back 10-plus years, our tax rate was 64 cents for a long time. And then the council wanted to borrow, we borrowed $43 million, the city did, approved by the council. And at that time, we said, look, you can borrow this $43 million, and we lined out where, you know, specifically we were gonna spend that $43 million, roughly 10 projects. We completed every one of them except Riverfront Park. So we had to increase the tax rate from 64 cents to 69 cents because of that, borrowing that 43 million. It's like if you were to go buy a new car and you said, I'm gonna finance that new car over 60 months. You know how much your note's gonna be. Well, we know how much we're gonna have to pay back per year. And that's why every year a certain portion of the property tax rate goes to repay debt. So I'd say maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we went to the council and we said, all right, how much do you want to borrow this time? And the council said $10 million only for street rehabilitation. And we said, okay, and you're going to have to increase the tax rate from 69 cents to 71 cents. And that's where we are today. And so the next question for the council is, it's time to borrow again. We're not asking you to make a decision today. We just want you to start thinking about it, because you will have to make a decision within probably the next, I'd say, month or two. So the old rule of thumb was, for us, this is the city of Beaumont, this isn't every city in America, but for the city of Beaumont, based on our debt and our revenues and expenditures, if you wanted to borrow $10 million, you needed to increase the tax rate 1 cent. That's been the general rule, which I'd say still holds today. However, this is an unusual year because our appraised values went up, they're saying approximately 14%, okay, by the appraisal district. Well, we've never seen that, right? So that's a lot of additional revenue, and there's going to be a lot of protest over the next few months. So we don't know how that's all going to shake out, and we probably will not know until sometime in July, probably the latter part of July, which gets interesting because we have to turn in this budget to you by August the 15th. So let's talk about the first line item, street rehab. So when we borrowed the $10 million 3 or 4 years ago, the goal was to try to spend $5 million a year on street rehabilitation citywide. Street rehabilitation, in summary, you're either doing asphalt overlays or you're doing concrete repair. So you have a concrete street out there and a certain panel, let's say from here to the wall, needs to be replaced. You'll go in and break it out and put in new concrete just in that specific area. So we do that with this money. The great majority, though, goes to asphalt overlays. So probably, maybe it's been, let's just say 8 years ago, the city council said, how do we know what condition our streets are in? So staff worked, we found a company, reputable company that came in, and they have this technology where they can drive our 80 square miles of the city of Beaumont and determine the pavement type. Is it concrete? Is it asphalt? What is it? And then is it in fair condition, good, poor, excellent? So we have a rating of every street in the city of Beaumont. And the council, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, said, let's update this index, we call it. This listing that's this thick of every street in the city of Beaumont. So that company came back in, the council approved the contract, and now we have an updated index. Again, every street in Beaumont, fair, poor, gives you a rating. That's used, it's not the main, it's the main ingredient, but it doesn't, we don't look at that to make the final recommendation. We look at what does the index say for that roadway? How many businesses, residences are along that roadway? What are the traffic counts? What condition is it in? Meaning sometimes it may be in fair condition, a lot of traffic, a lot of businesses, a lot of residences where let's make the investment now to save it and spend less money. So there's a lot that goes into the engineers. You know, we've had 4 public works directors in the last 10 years. And we've had some really good ones, and we have an excellent one right now. And Bart Barkowiak, and working with, he's not here today. He needed to take a vacation, he did. But, you know, and working with Molly, you know, we have really good people, right? So, but they're the ones that make the recommendation to me, to y'all. So this company that came back in and reevaluated or updated our index is telling, and I made this report to the council, I believe 4 or 5 months ago, but before, you know, you guys were elected. And, you know, former Councilmember Mouton's here and Roy West is here, so that's good. You know, because you're going to be dealing with this, one of you will, for a long time. Mayor Ames has dealt with this for 30 years, and she knows the ins and outs as well as anyone. So back to street rehab. What they said was this council, the city, needs to spend $8 million a year. And I may be giving more information. You guys don't know how this works. And one member out here does not. So that's why I'm going through this. You need to spend $8 million a year to make progress. If you continue to spend $5 million a year, you're going to lose ground, right? So they said you need to spend $8 million a year, which is a lot to spend. We're going to have a challenge trying to find the contractors to do the work. We think we can do it, but it'll be a challenge. So we're starting off with the baseline of staff's going to recommend that we borrow $16 million to try to meet that $8 million a year threshold. Okay? So that's where we came up with $16 million. Citywide ditching program. Bart Barkowiak and his staff, and I think they're right on, are saying we need to do, especially after Harvey and Imelda, we need to do more ditching work citywide. And $4 million is to be over a 2-year period. And if you look at the description in the capital program, he's saying if you spend $2 million a year, you're getting to about 20% of your drainage infrastructure that we're responsible for. So that's where the $4 million comes into play. And then this is new. So the citywide ditching program, we do ditching every day, but this is new in that we would go out for bids and hire outside contractors to do this work, just like we do with pipe bursting and large water mains and so forth. Stormwater pipe inspections and point repairs would be hire outside groups that do this every day, that really know what they're doing, to go inspect our large stormwater infrastructure, tell us where we're having the greatest problems, water intrusion and so forth, where we can make point repairs specific to that line. And so if you want to address drainage that we control, not DD6, we control, this is a way to do it, where you'd see a pretty large impact if you did this over the next 2 years, as well as the inspections and point repairs. So this is our recommendation at this time. I cannot sit here, I can sit here and tell you, I think you need to borrow 22 million this next time. Anything, Mayor and Councilman Samuel dealt with this forever. You know, the list of all the projects in the capital program, this doesn't get to any of those. If the council wants to do any other project on that list, which again is in the packet you have, that's on top of 22 million, and we have to pay for it. And we're not asking you to make a decision today, but you will over the next 30, 60 days. Got to get you thinking along the line, so we try to keep these. You don't want to have projects in the pipeline that number one, we're not going to put them on hold. What we do is we just pay for them with cash, and then we have to reimburse ourselves when you borrow the next time. But you don't want to get too far behind, number one. Number two, cannot sit here today and tell you if you borrow $22 million, what's the impact going to be on the tax rate. We don't know yet. It's feasible. It's possible you may not even have to increase the tax rate to do that because of this additional revenue. It's possible, we may come back and say, no, it's the normal 2 cents, or it's 1 cent this time. So Todd's going to come forward and tell you this gets more complicated because after Hurricane Laura, the city, the mayor knows this, I think she helped with the letter, we sent a letter to the state, and it has to do with rollback. I want Todd to explain what rollback means, especially the new council members, and how that impacts us and how it impacts this tax rate. If you borrow 22 million, it's up to you what you borrow. You can borrow, you don't have to borrow any money. You could borrow, there are other projects that y'all can push for, you just have to pay for them. That's all we're trying to say.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to try to explain this the best I can, but if there's any questions as we go, just stop me. The tax rate calculation process is pretty complicated. There's a form we have to follow. It's 8 pages long, and there's 70 calculations or questions you have to answer in order just to calculate our tax rate. So it's not something that's easily done. But I just want to give you a little bit of background so you understand some of the terminology. So prior to Senate Bill 2, which was effective for tax year 2020, which correlates to the fiscal year we're in now, prior to that, they had what was called an effective rate. And the effective tax rate was the rate that would generate the same amount of tax revenue as the prior year based on the same property. Now, there was a rollback rate that tied into that effective rate. The rollback rate is basically the effective rate plus 8%. This was prior to Senate Bill 2. It's all changed now. So basically, you could generate an increase of 8% in your tax revenue without voter approval. Any amount greater than 8% of tax revenue would allow the voter to file for a petition and hold an election. So now, since the passage of Senate Bill 2, things have changed, including the terminology. The rollback rate, which is now called the voter approval rate, and when we go through our budget process this year, you'll hear these terms. So now the rollback rate is called the voter approval rate. And according to Senate Bill 2, it can only be 3.5% greater than what was called the effective rate. The effective rate is now called the no new revenue rate. So any amount above the 3.5% would trigger an automatic election of the voters. It wouldn't be one that they would have to file a petition for. It's automatic. But there was a clause in Senate Bill 2. It said if there's a disaster in that year, you can file basically a disaster clause and ask to go back to the 8% rate instead of the 3.5% rate. So when we came to y'all during the budget process last year, we talked about it, and council gave us the approval to file that disaster clause, which allowed us to go 8%. We didn't really ended up needing it last year, but we filed it just in case. That clause also allows you to extend that 8% above the no new revenue rate for 2 more years. So that's something we're gonna talk about later when we get basically our approved appraisal rolls, because you might hear from citizens, hey, I don't want y'all to go above the 3.5% tax revenue above the no new revenue rate, if they read about it, but we have this disaster clause that's been filed that allows us to go up to 8%. So it's gonna be tricky to figure out how all that's gonna work. So as the city manager said, the preliminary appraised values are up 14%. So there could be a situation where we actually need to lower our overall tax rate unless you want to file for, unless there's going to be an automatic election. So you got to remember the tax rate comes in 2 parts. It has the M&O part, that's maintenance and operations, that goes to the general fund. That's the rate that we can pretty much, we have leniency, we can set that rate. The INS rate, which is your debt service rate, that's calculated by the state's laws. So these 8 pages help you calculate your INS rate. So if you want to keep your tax rate at 71, we figure out what our INS rate is, and the difference goes to maintenance and operations. So again, like we said, we're thinking about borrowing in excess of $20 million. Normally that would be a 2%, a 2-cent increase in our tax rate. You might not need to do that this year because the appraised values are so high, but you will have to increase your INS rate by those 2 cents to cover those debt payments, which means effectively you're taking 2 cents away from the general fund. Again, we don't know how it's all going to shake out. We haven't seen the numbers because there's all kind of calculations that go into it, including sales taxes. So we just wanted to give you some information, food for thought, and see if you have any questions.
Questions, council? It changes every year almost, it seems like. Not quite, but yeah.
Every 2.
Yeah. Anything? And Todd's not going anywhere, so if you think of something, I'm sure he's happy to talk to you at any time, whether we're in here or not. Thank you, Todd.
It's going to be a busy budget process, again, mostly because of the higher appraisals.
When do you think we'll kind of have an idea where it's going to shake out? Any idea? I know a lot of people
Last year,
are
they
probably
submitted a number, and then they had to go back and redo it because it was incorrect. So, again, we have to turn this thing, the budget, in by charter by August the 15th.
right.
So what that means is when we're working on the budget, we're talking about $300 million document, budget, $300 million, $290 this year. Our staff's been working on it for months with division managers, department directors, and so it's the best numbers you have, basically, best numbers you have by, say, mid-July, sometimes even sooner, because by the time you may have good numbers July the 15th, by the time you're putting it all together and turning in that document, I mean, just from a timing standpoint, that's the best you can do. And again, it's the footprint for the next year. It's not, I mean, it's set in stone, but you do have some flexibility where we come to you and ask you to approve budget amendments, and we ought to be able to tell you why, which we do. So things definitely change. So, but to answer your question, it's when do you think the appraisal district will give us the?
So I believe by law, I think they're supposed to give us the certified rolls by July 25th. Then after that, there's some give and take between the appraisal district and the city because they need some of our information also once they give us those certified rolls. But I think also by the new law under Senate Bill 2, we have until August 7th to provide you our proposed tax rates. Again, we were late last year due to it was first year, so there was errors. So anyway, I think hopefully by August 7th, we will have a firm tax rate.
Okay. Anything, council? You have something?
Yeah, I have a question. It's not related to the tax rate, but it's related to the capital program. When you talk about the citywide ditching program, I saw this back in the 80s when Charlton Pollard transitioned from open ditches to now, are we talking about a transition to eliminate some of the citywide open ditches, or are we we're not talking
Clean.
about.
No, that 4 million would allow you to approximately touch about 40% of the system, and those are mostly open, shallow ditches that we could grade better, clean out. And then underneath that, the inspections and point repairs, those are enclosed stormwater lines, basically. So, but back to the citywide ditching, most of that is what you see, grass ditches around the city.
Okay, so it would help the drainage. It's not gonna change our method of getting excess water all out of the neighborhoods.
Well, you're cleaning culverts and you're doing a better job with, again, the grading or the slopes of ditches, making sure they're clean, that they're on grade, flowing like they're supposed to. And we do that work in-house right now. We just don't get to touch, a lot of the, when you say 80 square miles of, maybe there's a description that I can, let's see. So it says here that we operate and maintain 316 miles of drainage ditches. And so 2 million per year would allow the yearly maintenance on approximately 20% of drainage ditches that we, the city, own. So 316 miles, that's a lot of open ditches across the city. And right now, it's, with what we're doing, I mean, it makes a difference, but it doesn't address as much as we should.
We're maintaining it all the time,
Yeah.
but this is more of
Yeah, if you spent 10 million, let's say over the next 3, 4, 5 years, you could address the entire system.
Councilmember Getz.
So right now, as I understand it, city ordinances require homeowners to maintain their own ditch unless it's at a depth of 4 feet or more. And are we talking about going into neighborhoods where homeowners right now are expected to maintain their own ditch and doing ditching work? Or are we talking about only doing ditching work on ditches that are 4 feet or more?
Well, the city attorney can add to this. What that means is if the ditch is 4 feet in depth or less, the homeowner is responsible for mowing it and maintaining. That's what we mean by maintaining, mowing. We don't expect homeowners to go out and grade the ditch or, put in their own, address the culverts and so forth. So what that means is mowing the ditch. So every ditch you drive by in the city, if it's a concrete ditch in the city of Beaumont, it's owned by Drainage District 6. If it's a grass ditch, it's either ours or DD6, but most of the grass ditches along the roadway in front of a home and business are the city of Beaumont's. So if it's 4 feet or greater, it's on our list right now, and we, the city, it's actually the city Parks Department actually does the mowing of those ditches 4 feet or greater. You see those big tractors driving around the city every day. That's what they do primarily. I mean, they're mowing some of our city parks. We contract out most of the mowing at our parks. We do in-house. We maintain ditches greater than 4 feet. So if they're 4 feet or less, the homeowner business is responsible. And that's the way it's been for decades and decades. But to answer your question, citywide ditching program, that 4 million, if approved, we would be assessing all ditches in the city, no matter what the depth is. Are they flowing properly? Do they need to be sloped differently? How's the culvert? Is it in good condition? Replace them if needed.
So this would touch on some of the complaints that are brought to you recently by homeowners that say, I've got a ditch in front of my house and the water's not moving, it's stagnant, and it's just not flowing at all. So this could address something like that.
Anyone else? Council? Councilmember Jarrell?
At 4 feet, is that depth or width?
Depth.
Depth.
Okay.
And how did they, as far as if they need to dig it out or if they need to backfill it, do they go out and test that, or does it go by complaints or what?
Our engineering division is involved, and our staff at Streets and Drainage, they'll go out on site and look at the area in question and There's a lot of factors that come into play, but those engineers know what they're doing and then make an assessment on what needs to be done to rectify or remedy a certain situation.
And this is covered, this is the whole city.
It'll be the whole city, now it won't touch the entire system.
far as what's
Yeah,
needed.
that'll touch about 40% of the system, if that 4 million were approved. But what we're trying to recommend now is it ought to be continually funded, just like street rehab, if we're gonna get to where we need to be. We need to put the resources behind it to make that happen, and this is that path forward.
Okay.
So, are we gonna have a capital plan workshop?
Yes.
We typically do.
Yeah, we'll do that during the budget process. And probably ought to start that a little earlier this year, just to have enough time to walk everyone through it.
And one last question on the ditching program. Would this include blowing out the ditches? Is it the same thing I had some citizens ask while block walking during campaign, right before hurricane season? It'd be good to kind of blow out some of the ditches. Would this include that?
Did you say blowout?
Well, clean out. Yeah, the blowout, clean out. I understand cutting and maintaining, but
There's a lot of, there are ditches where there's litter in the ditches that we go clean out, but it is the property owner's responsibility.
okay.
If it's not mowed properly, that affects drainage, as we all know. So we can cite people, and we do occasionally when, if their ditch is just, if the grass has grown up a certain depth, we can try to get them to correct it. But let's say it's a vacant home, or you cannot find the heirs. It's something our staff works through all the time, but to answer your question, that's, it's part of the equation, because it definitely will affect drainage. If someone's got a lot of trash in their ditch and it's impeding the flow of that water, it's a problem.
Yeah, this is in addition to what we're already doing, basically, that we
Yeah,
want to get on a
the
schedule.
city's authorized us, there's a company in town, it's now called Quest. It used to be Beaumont Products and Services, and it's people with mild disabilities, whether physical, mental. And we've had this great relationship with them, great success story, where we've worked with them for probably 30 years. Beaumont Products and Services, again, it's changed their name to Quest a couple years ago. Well, we spend, the council's authorized it, a lot of money. They employ people that you see walking across the city, picking up litter, cleaning up some of these problem areas. When we are aware of those problems, we'll ask them to go address it, and they can address it within a day. What they do on a routine basis, though, is they have identified streets throughout the city of Beaumont that they're trying to address, some on a monthly basis, some even more than that. And again, they probably have, maybe sometimes 6 to 10 people out there at a time. They do a great job, and that's, again, something that's very valuable. So if we have a problem area, if you have a problem area, let me know, and then we can look to see, number one, is it already on our list, or number two, can we send them out there to address it?
Yes, sir.
I think, going back to what Councilman Turner was saying, as far as blowing out, some of the ditches, like they'll have a culvert runs under the driveway. Is that the responsibility of the homeowner, or does the city blow those culverts out?
We're responsible for that. We're responsible for the drainage system itself. They're responsible for just that routine maintenance. Again, it's mostly grass cutting, weed eating, and so forth.
If it's more shallow than 4 feet.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, anything else, council? All right, that will conclude our general business today. I would like to read that at the close of the city council meeting, the council will hold an executive session to consider matters related to the deliberation of the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property in accordance with section 551.072 of the government code, to wit, 555 Main Street. Consider matters related to contemplated or pending litigation in accordance with section 551.071 of the government code, claim of Lauren Lewis, Lisbeth Beth M. Noble individually and on behalf of all others similarly situated versus the city of Beaumont, case number 1:20-CV-00400. I'll now move to citizen comments. If you would like to speak today and you haven't already done so, Please fill out the green slip at the rear of the room and hand it to the city clerk at the front of the room. She will call out your name. We would appreciate if you keep your comments to 3 minutes. As I mentioned earlier, the green light will come on when you approach the podium, and the red light will come on when your time is up.
Brian Neatvo, 6955 Shanahan Drive, Beaumont, Texas.
Good afternoon, Council, Mayor. I gave some paperwork to Mr. Velshaw. He can pass out to you guys and look at it a little later. But basically, I wanted to make the city aware of a foundation that I'm going to be creating soon. It would be called Make Ends Meet Foundation, and the purpose of it is to bridge the gap and help single-parent households to provide hot and ready food for their family. Start off once a week, whatever. As it progresses, we'll obviously put more time into it, maybe several days a week. The vision is to provide nutritious meals to Beaumont single-parent families on food assistance programs, SNAP, things like that. The purpose is, at this point in time, they cannot use a SNAP card to purchase ready-to-eat hot meals, except during times of a ice storm, natural disaster, things like that, in which we did have for a few months, but it's dried up as of March. So this would be something permanent. I'll have to secure a location, a commercial kitchen, and maybe get with Mr. Boone about the community development block grant and see what portion could be funded to this. Will be a 501c3. No one will be salaried. I would like to see what amount of money could be allocated towards it. If I could get with Ms. Broussard and see the figures or numbers on the community development block grant, what kind of money might be available, and the application process. Once I get all this done, this is going to take several months to do. I've been looking to the IRS. It takes 2 months at least just to get the 501c3 approved before I can even put together anything to get the Secretary of State and IRS all the paperwork that needs to be done. So in the next couple of months, I'll be coming back and I'll be asking for your help in many ways, from the city, from BISD, from Southeast Texas Food Bank, from citizens in general. Anybody that wants to help, it'd be appreciated. But that is all.
Thank you, Mr. Newville.
Yes, ma'am.
That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, is there any other citizen who wishes to speak today? If there's no one, I'll close the floor, and I will begin with you, Councilmember Neal.
No comment, Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Samuel. Councilmember Felshaw.
Thank you, Mayor. Just remember that we're in the runoff for the mayoral race. I see Robin Mouton and Roy West here today. Early voting starts Monday the 7th, runs to the 15th. Election day is the 19th. Please, citizens, get out and vote. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. Councilmember Turner.
No comment.
Councilmember Getz.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to take just a few minutes to talk about the Memorial Day ceremony that we had in Beaumont yesterday. And of course, as we all know, Memorial Day is that day to commemorate those service members that lost their lives protecting America and fighting America's wars. We had an incredibly great program, thanks to Danny Blanchard offering once more Forest Lawn and Barbara Otto, former city employee of many, many years, putting together an incredible program. I want to extend my appreciation to her for securing Major Katie Cook as the keynote speaker for yesterday. If you don't know who Major Katie Cook is, you can Google her. She's been on Good Morning America and lots of newscasts. She is the first woman that was a pilot for the Blue Angels. That's an incredible feat, being a pilot for the Blue Angels, man or woman. And she's the first female that's done that. Before that, she was in the military on active duty, and she told the story of being summoned to save a group of Marines that were killed, that were engaged in a firefight in Afghanistan, and it was one of her first missions, and she was able to get in there and launch some Tomahawk missiles and take out the bad guys and save a crew of Marines. And there's some video that was narrated by Harrison Ford that was shown yesterday. Just an amazing program. The Southeast Texas Veterans Services Group did the flag ceremonies and also recognized several paralyzed veterans that were in wheelchairs that were also in attendance. So the weather was perfect. I just can't say enough good about the day, how emotional it was, and how thankful we are and should be to these families of those that have given everything. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Durio.
No comment.
Thank you. Anything? Okay, I do not have anything either, so thank y'all for coming. We will now recess into executive session.